Good afternoon. I'm going to call to order this meeting of the Health, Environment, and Community Engagement Committee. My name is Cam Gordon. I'm chair of the committee. Today I'm joined by council members Cano, Andrew Johnson, and Lisa Bender. That's a quorum of the committee, and so we can conduct the city's business. I'd also like to welcome some guests here. We have some visiting students from Heritage Academy, Minneapolis Public Schools. Maybe you could wave so we could know who you are. Welcome. Maybe they'll even give you a shot on camera back home, so your friends and family can see you, and it will be saved. I'm not sure how long, but for a long, long time. We have a somewhat brief agenda. We have 6 items on our agenda today. The first 3 are consent items, and then the second 3 are discussion items. I'm going to go through our consent items, and any council member on the committee, and welcome to Councilmember Glidden as well. You can pull something for discussion of these 3. The first is authorizing an amendment to the contract with the Minneapolis High-Rise Representative Council to add up to an additional $50,000 for revised total contract value not to exceed $100,000 to expand the scope of the current work and extend the contract termination date to December 31st, 2015. The second item is setting a public hearing for May 18th, 2015 to consider the subject matter of a series of amendments to Title 10 of the Minneapolis Code of Ordinances relating to the Food Code, relating to meat and meat products, soft drink manufacture, storage, milk and dairy products, administration, licensing, and some general provisions. That's introduced by Councilmember Andrew Johnson. And the third item is setting a public hearing for that same date, May 18th, to consider the subject matter of an ordinance amending Title 11, Chapter 231 of the code relating to health and sanitation, public swimming pool code, adding or deleting language to remove conflicts with Minnesota statutes and rules. Would any committee member like to pull any of those items for a comment or questions? Seeing none, then I'll move the entire consent agenda. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed, no? All right, those motions carry. And now we can move to our discussion items. We're going to be discussing the Senior Citizen Advisory Committee and some appointments to that committee, and then also get a report from our Tree Advisory Commission. First, we'll hear about our Senior Citizen Advisory Committee. Welcome very much, Ms. Kendrick. Introduce yourself.
Thank you. Thank you to all of you. We have been in a position of transition with our Senior Citizen Advisory Committee to the mayor, and we see a great opportunity to take a step back and visit our Minneapolis for a Lifetime strategy. And the Senior Citizen Advisory Committee to the mayor felt that it was time to look at their structure, their bylaws, their mission and purpose. And so we wanted to request that we restructure the committee to eliminate the organizational representatives who did have voting rights, but they were not required to be of any certain age or residents of the city of Minneapolis. And we felt, just also for quorum potential, that we should add a member at large. We are currently keeping the 13 ward members, and then with the extra member at large, we would have 4 members at large.
Thank you very much. And we'll have to, if the resolution passes, we'll also have to get used to a new name. It will now be called the Minneapolis Advisory Committee on Aging.
Yep, that's correct. And again, that's following in line with our Minneapolis for a Lifetime strategy, which does focus on the needs of an aging population, but it also really uses an intergenerational lens and looks at our older population as a benefit in addition to everybody within their communities in Minneapolis.
Are there any questions or comments? I don't see any. Would you like to just tell us a little bit about the new appointments? I think I'll move both actions together. There's also, I believe there's actually a revised, just for my colleagues up here, there's a revised number 5 that should be before you. Maybe you can tell us a little bit why it was revised, and then just tell us a little bit about the new appointees.
Sure. There was quite a few vacancies in their wards. A lot of that had to do with the new elections as well as the boundary changes for the wards. So the previous seated council had passed a resolution to not fill any of the advisory committee seats that are ward-based until after the elections. So we have been working very hard and very mindful with reaching out to community members who have such a vast array of skill sets and knowledge that they bring to the table. I'm very excited about the appointments. We've got quite a few coming on. We've just added some within the last council session. And so after we add these new members, we will have almost a full advisory committee. There will only be 4 more seats left to fill. But again, we're being very strategic as to who we reach out to. Diane Sprague is our member at large, and I do want to point out, it was stated that she resides in Ward 10, but she actually does reside in Ward 11 for a member at large. And she has been with the state. One of her big specialties is in accessory dwelling units and universal design. She instructs on universal design. Housing is one of our top priorities in our Minneapolis for a Lifetime strategy. So very happy to have her on board. She also has quite a few connections at state and federal levels. So Mr. Lacken is in Ward 2, and he is also in construction, but has a whole bunch of other interests, including health and wellness. Again, we have 5 goals within the Minneapolis for a Lifetime strategy, and they touch on transportation, housing, health and wellness, as far as giving back to the community and ensuring that as people age, they have opportunities to contribute civically, volunteerism, employment, entrepreneurialism. So Flo Kastner, who is in Ward 5, is also a member of the Minneapolis Public Housing High-Rise Council. She's very, very active in her community and has served on several community boards, her neighborhood organization she's very involved in as well. Paulette Will is Council Member Bender's. And Paulette, we just received that application, pretty new, so I just got a chance to meet and talk with Paulette. Paulette, she's a community activist, and one of her focuses is on women's health and wellness issues. And there is another addition that we just added. Again, we've been working very fast and furious to fill our ward seats, and that is Hazel Tanner. She's in Ward 11. She's also very, very involved in her community and has a focus on housing and transportation particularly. So very, very excited to have all of them on board. They're very eager to get started. And all of these members have been regularly attending, even though they have not been officially seated, because they are very, very passionate about the work to be done on this committee.
Thank you very much. And with these appointments, will we then have a full commission or committee?
Yep, full 2-year terms.
Great. I don't see any questions. Councilmember Bender.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think these are great changes. I just wanted to thank staff for your work supporting this group. My appointment, Ms. Will, one of the things that I was really hoping to find was a voice of an older resident who's she's a longtime renter in the community, and she's on a fixed income. And as rents are rising in my neighborhoods, I hear a lot from people who are concerned about displacement. And so, there are a lot of folks who've been renting for a very long time in the community. And so I was really excited to have that perspective, especially considering the group's focus on housing. So I wanted to mention that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Wonderful. We've been joined by Councilmember Quincy as well. Did you want to make any comments? No. Okay. Well, thank you. I just thank you for co-authoring this resolution. It seems like it's been a long time coming, and we finally have it forward. I know that we've been discussing this for quite some time, the whole restructuring, and appreciate the thoughtful work that you put into it. I will then move approval of the resolution restructuring the Senior Citizen Advisory Committee as the Minneapolis Advisory Committee on Aging. And also, I will approve the recommendation of the 4 ward representatives and 1 at-large representative to be appointed to the Minneapolis Advisory Committee on Aging. Any questions on that motion? No? All right. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, those motions carry. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And we can move on to our final item for the afternoon, which is our annual report from the Minneapolis Tree Advisory Committee. Welcome back, Ms. Booth.
Okay, thank you very much. It's our pleasure to be back here. For the record, my name is Peggy Booth, and I'm a resident of the city of Minneapolis at 1089 25th Avenue Southeast. So I'm here to give the annual report of the Minneapolis Tree Advisory Commission. And this group was created in March of 2004 by the Minneapolis Park and Recreation Board. Our mission is to enhance the Minneapolis urban forest and improve its long-term health. And we have 4 goals, which specifically have us advising both the City Council and the Park Board, including advising on fiscal-related matters. This is a list of the members of the Minneapolis Tree Advisory Commission, which includes a number of citizen appointees, such as myself, as well as Robin Garwood is our City Council representative. We have a university and mayoral representative, 2 people from Public Works and 1 from Minneapolis Park Board. 1 person is a professional arborist, and then another is a developer. So Minneapolis needs more trees, and that is a paraphrase of a statement when people were given a choice in an online poll of what's important to the city. That was in the top 5, actually it was number 4. And so we feel that in many cases people do have interest in and concern about our trees and believe that they are part of what makes Minneapolis great. And there was a study out the last few months that says street trees help improve mental health. So just one more reason for us to like street trees. So I guess the real question we have before us is, are we sustaining our trees and all their benefits, their environmental, their economic, and their health benefits? Or are we gambling our children's health by not taking care of that important, living, growing part of our city's infrastructure? So today, the report topics I'm going to be talking about are pretty straightforward: planting, maintaining our trees, preserving our trees. And for each of these, I'll talk about the status of our 2014 recommendations, the accomplishments and opportunities we've seen this year, as well as some recommendations that we're making at this time. So first of all, about planting, the idea is to put the right trees in the right place. And the recommendation we had last year that related to it is to increase city funding for the popular city tree program, and we're very glad that that funding is continuing. Over the last 10 years, the city tree program, which is run by the nonprofit Tree Trust, has offered 13,000 trees that have been planted in yards throughout the city. The map, which is shown here, is for 2014. So 1,300 trees of 16 different species were planted, including 4 types of fruit trees and 9 large shade or evergreen trees. So they are definitely following our suggestions for more fruit trees and more large trees. And in 2015, 1,500 trees have already been ordered by people of 14 species with similar good diversity. From our 2007 Tree Commission report, any of you, Cam or others who were here at that time might remember that there was a survey of public and private trees in Minneapolis. And at that point in time, it was determined an estimated 22% of the trees, public and private, in our city were green ash, which means now that we have emerald ash borer here, which we didn't in 2007, all of those trees are at risk of being cut. And what we're trying to do is to avoid them all coming down at the same time and the cost and environmental problems that represents. We're also concerned about the diversity of trees that are in our public sector. So you can see in this pie chart that there's 23% maples, about 13% ash and linden, 10% elm, and that's a testimony to how well we have controlled Dutch elm disease, which started here about 40 years ago, and then a number of other species. But in 2014, almost 8,000 trees were planted in the public sector, including 127 different species or cultivars of trees in 19 different families, a family being like birch is a family, maple's a family, so forth. And in 2015, this spring, 7,350 trees are being planted. Some are already in the ground, and there'll be more planted in the fall. And it includes 99 different species and cultivars, again, from 19 different families of trees. So this pie chart represents where we'll be this summer, and it shows an important reduction in our public ash trees from 13% to 9%, a reduction in maple and linden, as well as an increase in oak trees and other species of trees. And we think this is moving us in the right direction. If you want an illustration of the diversity of trees, the Minneapolis Park and Recreation Board has an app called Minneapolis Park Trees Near You. And here's a depiction of East Phillips Park. So each one of these little circles on here is a different species of tree or cultivar that are in the park. So it shows that when we did the 2013 Arbor Day planting, we also helped increase diversity of this park. The second topic under planting is our concern about places that are shared by pedestrians and trees. And you, I believe, heard the report from Gary Johnson of the University of Minnesota looking at what happened when we had a major windstorm that took down a number of our trees in June 2013. And out of that report, some of the findings were cutting roots jeopardizes stability, and cutting roots can happen when there's sidewalk or curb repair just adjoining the tree. That when work is happening, there should be consultation with foresters and arborists, that wider boulevards are better for trees, and that larger trees in particular need larger boulevards. And this may all seem pretty straightforward and logical, but I think it was important for that report to state that. And as a result, and at your request, the Minneapolis Tree Advisory Commission and Minneapolis Park Board Forestry are working with the Minneapolis Pedestrian Advisory Commission on recommendations for city policies and practices so that we'll be able to accommodate both great places for trees and great places for pedestrians. Another pedestrian tree space issue that we're looking at is the obsolete planting circumstances of some of our trees downtown. These often get referred to as tree coffins by those of us that are concerned about trees, where there's inadequate space for tree growth or air and moisture exchange to get to the roots. One of the things that has happened to address that is, as per the advice from the Minneapolis Tree Advisory Commission, almost $400,000 of city bonding was allocated for replacement of these hardscape or urban streetscape type trees. So as an example, last year an innovative tree-friendly paving project was installed as a test of a new kind of pavement called pervious bonded aggregate. And it may look like it's solid, but it's not. Sometimes it gets mentioned as being like the texture of a Rice Krispie bar. So air and moisture can move through that pavement to the tree roots because tree roots need both air and moisture, and then it can support the people. So you have a great pedestrian space and a good tree growing space. So under the topic of planting, our recommendations this year are to continue to increase the diversity of trees planted by the public. And a goal that we have is to aim for no more than 5% of any genus or species in our city. And just looking at the kinds of trees we are planting now, if we had a more even distribution, we could achieve that. But I would caution that many of these trees are much, much smaller than our elms and our other big trees. And so we need to, at the same time we pay attention to diversity, pay attention to getting large trees that will grow to be large and have good shade, because it's that amount of foliage they have that equals the environmental benefits that trees produce. We also want to make sure that every single street has a diversity of trees, and we've encouraged the Park Board to continue its partnership with the University of Minnesota to test new trees and planting methods. We do invite you and anyone else who hears this to come to Minneapolis Arbor Day 2015, which will be Thursday, May 14th at Stewart Park. In the morning, the students will be planting trees, and there will be a ceremony at 12:45 p.m. And the tree diversity will include 50 species and cultivars in 29 genera and 14 botanical families. And this time we're focusing on planting no trees that are preferred host of what might be our next insect scourge for trees, which is called the Asian longhorn beetle. That is to say, in this planting, there will be no willow, no maple, no buckeye, and no birch. Another recommendation related to diversifying our trees is planting more trees that people can eat. And we're grateful for the $50,000 that was made available in city bonding that we've recommended go to the Park Board for planting fruit and nut groves on parklands, and expect to see some interesting results of this over the next several years. Our other recommendation is for the city to adopt policies and standards for tree infrastructure, and specifically to update the city's 2004 urban forest policy and related specifications, looking at and addressing, coming up with very specific tree-friendly recommendations on minimum boulevard widths, new sidewalk specifications, required soil volumes for trees, where and how to plant trees in hardscape areas, and guidelines for buried utility locations. We, as a tree commission, endorsed the tree-friendly Nicollet Mall reconstruction proposals, which are looking at a minimum of 600 cubic feet of soil per tree, suspended pavement and structural soil, which gives the tree roots more growing room and a better growing space, groves of trees with shared soil volumes for a whole group of trees, alternative snow and ice treatment rather than salt, which is not good for our boots or our cars or our trees, and a 5-year maintenance agreement with the people who plant those trees. We also support the Downtown Improvement District's intention to do tree guidelines. So our second topic is to maintain trees and care for what we have. And our recommendation in 2014 related to increasing young tree care, particularly watering. And I must say it's really a mixed result in terms, the Tree Commission still asserts that we are not getting enough water, both on the part of the city and the Park Board, as well as on the part of adjoining residents. And it just takes, yes, we had a rainstorm come through last night, and we're predicted to have rain this week, but we have many young trees that were planted a few weeks ago, got that watering, and have not had water since, unless somebody took it upon themselves to water it. Now, one exciting thing is a group of 30 and 40-somethings has developed a little nonprofit called Brewing a Better Urban Forest, and it's a private initiative to incentivize the public to water boulevard trees, and it reaches out to a younger generation of city voters. And they have a nice online system by which individuals can sign up to take care of trees. And we think that's a great idea, but we think the city needs to be having many more great ideas. One of the recommendations we've made to the Minneapolis Park Board this year is to fill Park Board vacancies that are really critical to the success of tree planting, the ash canopy replacement plan, and basic tree care. if with our 2015 recommendations, as I've indicated, we think there needs to be more done to water public trees. And really, we encourage the city and the park board, the fire department, public works, to work together to look at many ways, conservation corps, more staff, fire department people, and so forth. We still encourage the adoption of Gov Delivery to email drought watering reminders to residents. There is emails that go to people that have signed up for it after they get a new tree, but we feel there more could be done. And then to create more volunteers that, tree stewards that help take care of the trees. Our third and final topic is to preserve, to keep the best of our urban forest. And last year we recommended implementation of the Park Board's ash canopy replacement plan and the funding and hiring of a Minneapolis tree preservation coordinator, and I'll speak to those more in a moment. Just a little reminder that emerald ash borer has spread across the city, and it will be increasingly or exponentially increasing its spread. All ash are at risk, and all ash will become infected. So here's a depiction of how emerald ash borer has spread by neighborhoods since it entered our city in 2010. So 2011, we're still on the east side. 2012, still on the east side. 2013, it jumped into St. Anthony West, East Harriet, and down in the far southeastern corner of the city. 2014, it spread even further. And this year, 2015, we've added 3 new neighborhoods that haven't previously had confirmed emerald ash borer. The Carag neighborhood, the Central neighborhood, and the Morris Park neighborhood. So these are all places that have confirmed presence of trees infested by the emerald ash borer and are being removed or have been removed. And just a reminder, emerald ash borer is not controllable like Dutch elm disease. We won't see ash trees here for another 40 years unless someone has chosen to inject them with insecticide for 40 years, which may or may not work, but nonetheless, I don't think we will have any green ash left here in 40 years like we have elm trees. So unlike our elms, all of our ash are doomed. And this is a graphic that shows how emerald ash borer has progressed in many other states in the Midwest and East. And we're in year 6, so we have yet to see a big surge of it. And what we're really trying to do is to level off this curve so we don't have streets of dead and dying trees and yards of dead and dying trees, but rather we control the cost and spread the effect over time. We can slow the spread by detecting and removing infested trees. This is a picture a block from my house. 2 trees were, actually 3, the third one's beyond there, but 3 trees were removed last year, and then this spring another one was marked in this stretch of the street. And we can replace trees more proactively and end up with a diversity of species and a diversity of ages of trees throughout our neighborhoods. Among the other issues that we are concerned about is the utility line and tree conflicts. And we appreciate that when the Xcel Energy franchise agreement was entered into the city, that there's a provision underlined at the bottom here that the company agrees to work cooperatively with the park board regarding the trimming and removal of trees and shrubs. And we're looking forward to hearing how that results in better care and better replanting of our trees in relationship to Xcel's work. We also think through the clean energy partnership between the city and utilities that the city should be increasingly looking at new tree-friendly practices, and in particular to look at burying power lines to avoid tree root conflicts as part of street reconstruction projects. But that isn't burying them underneath the main areas where you plant the trees. That may be burying them under the street or under the sidewalk. As far as funding the Park Board Forest Preservation Coordinator, There still needs to be a permanent funding package for this. This is a process or a person with the park board that will work with Public Works, work with contractors and subcontractors, work with utility companies to make sure that when construction projects are happening on our public lands and right-of-way, that every effort is made to take care of trees and not to cause unnecessary and harmful damage to the trees. And we've also urged the park board to continue to fund the tree preservation and reforestation levy annually. So in summary, we have 3 topics with 2 recommendations each. Under planting, diversify planted species and adopt policies and standards for trees and infrastructure. Under maintain, fill the park board forestry vacancies and do more to implement public watering and public tree watering strategy. And under preserve, fund the park board forest preservation coordinator position and continue to fund the tree preservation and reforestation levy annually. So this is our report that we give each year to the Minneapolis Park Board and to your council committee, and we greatly appreciate that, and I'd be happy to answer any questions I can. So thank you.
Well, thank you very much. Sounds like a very hardworking commission, and I appreciate the report and all the good work you're doing. I did have a couple questions. Maybe you could go back to your recommendations on the last slide. I had a question about funding the forest preservation coordinator position. Do you know this position was funded partially with city funds from Public Works? Is that correct?
I'm going to ask our city forester, Ralph Siebert, to come up and answer that.
Okay.
Good afternoon, everybody.
Good afternoon.
Right now, we're working with Mike Kennedy and Public Works to come up with the balance between Park Board funding and City Public Works funding in terms of that position. So it's in our Park Board budget as a position, and we have a person performing it in an acting role, but we haven't actually funded it from either source yet. So that's still coming.
But the person is getting paid?
He's getting paid in the position that he's in as an arborist.
Okay.
Correct. Right.
Which is funded by the Park Board.
Correct.
All right. So that's something to think about. I know that I think it's a very valuable position for us to have in Public Works. I also think in terms of power lines and the sidewalk reconstruction issues and some of those recommendations, it could be even more important to make sure to have that person there. So I appreciate you raising that issue here. Then I had another question that had to do with your second slide or something I just wanted to comment on, or the one that had the map. I don't know if you can go back to it or not, but it was at the very beginning of the presentation almost. It was about the City Trees program. So I guess it was the 5th or 6th
I
slide.
could go back there.
And it was just looking at the map, and I was struck by, well, first I looked at North Minneapolis, and I wondered why people aren't taking advantage of the program more there. But then my eyes wandered to my home turf and closer to your home turf, too, which is on the east side there. And there's a huge area there where it looks like hardly anybody is availing of this. And I wondered if you talked a little bit at the commission about whether it's commercial, industrial properties, or why, or how what we could do maybe to promote this program more citywide.
Yeah, thank you for the question, Councilmember Gordon. It is something that we have talked about, and it is a program that the trees are ordered basically through a web application, first come, first serve, and they are sold out within 3 days. And you may recall last year, actually, there were so many hits in the first hour that it crashed the computer system supporting it. So the question has been asked about whether there should be a differential in terms of making the trees available to some people in some wards sooner. So that is something that I guess I'll let Gail talk about with a little more authority than I have.
Okay, thank you. Welcome.
Good afternoon, Gail Press, Sustainability Director, and I work on the City Trees program along with Tree Trust. We actually went to the Tree Advisory Committee and asked for their recommendations, realizing that there were some issues with equity, and they suggested that we do outreach to 4 council wards in advance, and we worked with communications on some language issues and translation issues. And for those 4 wards, they had, I believe it was 3 weeks to order trees and in advance of everybody else. And we had 158 trees ordered from them, which we think is a good starting point. It's interesting, in North Minneapolis, there's a couple of other programs where people can receive free trees through a donor in the fall. And then in response to your business and trees, the Environmental Services and the Health Department has a program for those that have pollution control annual billing, can also get a free tree planted. So we're trying to do a map of all of the different programs together. But there still are some disparities. I know that when we did outreach to some council members, they were like, yeah, it's mostly rental in my ward, and it's really hard to get those folks to be interested in trees. We do offer not just online ordering, but we also, people can do it by phone, and they can also do it by paper. And this year was the first year we had Tree Trust have translation services, so that when people called up on the phone, if English wasn't their first language, they could talk to somebody in a language that they were comfortable with.
Okay, thank you. I'm glad that's something we're working on. Councilmember Bender?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Since we're talking about this map, I wondered if you could just clarify what this map is showing.
This is a map that was produced by the Tree Trust, and each dot is the location given, the residential address given by the person who ordered that tree. And we hope and presume, but it isn't, there's no way of absolutely assuring that it was planted to that address, but that's our hope and intention.
Got it. So these are trees that are off. These are not boulevard trees. These are trees that are in people's yards.
Yes.
So this isn't a map of our urban forest.
No,
by any
no.
means. Yeah.
This is a program to encourage residents to replace and replant trees in their own yards.
Got it. That was my understanding, but wanted to clarify, make sure.
It's a program, and I believe it's $25, and you can order a tree. And I believe this map shows the 1,300 trees from 2014.
Yeah.
Okay. So don't think it's every tree. Absolutely not. Appreciate that. Are there any other questions or comments? Anything you'd like to add, or anybody? Welcome other commission members.
Yeah, I'd like to introduce a couple other people that are here as part of the tree commission. There's Philip Patyande, who's with the Minneapolis Park and Recreation Board. He's our sustainable forestry coordinator. And we have Kit Richardson, who's an architect and developer, who's one of our volunteer members of the Minneapolis Tree Advisory Commission.
Thank you very much.
Oh, and Robin Garwood is behind me. He's our city council representative on the tree commission. Sorry, didn't have eyes on my back.
Well, thank you very much. Seeing no other questions or comments, then I'll move to receive and file the report.
Thank you.
All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? All right, that motion carries then. I don't see any other business before us, so we are adjourned. Thank you very much.